Heather Carlson is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's based in Boulder, Colorado, where her private practice is dedicated to the delicate work of healing relationships. But her work extends far beyond the therapy room. Heather's also a community builder. She is seasoned in women's groups. She facilitates a lot of different women's groups, offering retreats and gatherings centered around mindfulness. Through years of listening to women share stories of isolation and the quiet ache of real friendship, Heather has realized that we just needed a new way to find each other. It's very hard this day and age. And this is what led her to create something called The Invitation. It's a first of its kind program and is designed to guide women through a full year of deep intentional connection. And this is why I am so honored and delighted to have Heather here today. So Heather, thank you for joining us. Thank you for gifting us with some of your time today.
Kelly, it is such a pleasure to be here again and to see you again.
I know you were here in the Charleston area not too long ago. You held a couple of sessions talking about this great work you're doing in this program called The Invitation. So we'll get into The Invitation a little bit more, but how was your Charleston trip? Did you like it? Is this your first time here?
Well, I live in Boulder, Colorado, but I have deep Southern roots. My mother is from North Carolina, and that's where my children were all born. That's where I met my husband. I lived in Charlotte for 20 years. So I'm very familiar with the Charleston area. It's not so far from Charlotte, and it was just so grounding to be back in the South. I love where I live now, but you always like to go home. So it was really great to be back in the South and to be in Charleston again.
Well, I know that we were honored to have you here. I hope you'll come back. Heather hosted this great session I went to the one at Settle and Sass. There were two different ones, and it truly was a moment of deep connection. And there were so many interesting themes I feel like popped up, but I was just really drawn to the work that you're doing and this conversation around female friendship because, it's hard. Why is female friendship so hard? You deal with women all the time. What are you seeing?
Kelly, what I always tell people is the harder something is, usually the more it means to you. And I think female friendship is hard because it's so important and it means so much to us. And female friendship is intimate. And one of the sort of ironies of female friendship is that it is deeply intimate, and yet we want it sort of subconsciously to be easy. And it's not easy because anything intimate is inherently challenging. And so what drew me to this work is, I'm a relationship therapist. That's what I focus on, is helping people improve the quality of their relationships of all kinds. I do family therapy, individual and couples work. So I'm deep in relationships of all types. And as a psychotherapist, we're heavily trained in that biopsychosocial health of people. So, our biology, our social life, our psychological life. And so, of course, there's a huge focus in my profession on evaluating and assessing people's social health. And that is about our platonic friendships most of the time. And there's been a huge decline. Even before the pandemic, Vivek Murthy, who was the Surgeon General under Barack Obama, part of what every Surgeon General has sort of a mission or a particular aspect of health that they would like to tackle and sort of be their legacy. And his was connection. And he's the one who coined the term that we are in a loneliness epidemic. That was he was sort of the first person to say that. So that had my attention even before the pandemic. And then we had a pandemic. And when we were reemerging from the pandemic, I'm sitting in my office, my clinical office, and just hearing how soul-starved we all were for just friendship. And some people are calling this an epidemic. Some people are calling it a loneliness crisis. But the reason I'm interested in this is because it is one of the number one indicators of health, of quality of life, longevity, is the quality of our relationships. And those extend beyond our romantic relationships, which is what a lot of people focus on, and your nuclear family, which is going to be, like your children, if you have them, your partner. But the quality of our relationship extends beyond those. And those health indicators and predictors of how long you live, the quality of the life that you do live, are highly predicated upon the quality of our social relationships.
I saw a study recently talking about how how much loneliness is impacting our health, like you were saying. I can't remember the exact statistic, but I think there was this comparison. Maybe you've heard about this because I know you're big into science, about how it's like compared to smoking cigarettes or something. Like that's how detrimental it is to the impact on our health.
Right, Kelly. And I think this is one of the places where you and I really connect in our work. And I do love the science. And if you're interested in this topic about the health benefits of high quality social relationships, the best place to look is to the Harvard study. And
Okay.
there are TED Talks on the Harvard study. There is now a book called The Good Life, which is one of my top recommended books in any of the places where I make those lists of 1937. And of course, started at the Harvard University. And the premise is really interesting. It was comparing the leaders of the research wanted to compare the life outcomes of two different groups because there was disparity in the population of the Harvard student body. There were they were 18, young adults who were coming from the local area where Harvard was, which was an impoverished, low income, sort of the old term blue collar neighborhood, who got to go to Harvard. And then there were, a lot of the Harvard students were coming from more privileged backgrounds. And so these researchers were really interested in, well, okay, now they're all having this sort of leveling, theoretically, experience of getting a Harvard education. So do these people from these different backgrounds now have the same life trajectory? So this study is the longest longitudinal study of happiness, which is another word. I mean, Americans are obsessed with this topic, but really of quality of life in the world. So it's a really powerful study. It is valued around the world for what it has opened our eyes to clinically. And I'm going to, spoiler alert, if you read the Good Life book, which I highly recommend, it is a fascinating book written through stories of some of the participants of the study. So it's really well done. It's not boring. But the spoiler alert is what they found, the end, and this is ongoing, the study keeps finding the number one predictor of lifetime, quote unquote, happiness, the quality of your life, is the quality of your relationships. It isn't your education. It isn't what kind of background you came from. It isn't the access you have to finances. It isn't the job you have, the career path you take. None of those factors are the thing that will indicate and mostly predict the quality of your life. It is the quality of your relationships.
So, if the quality of our relationships is the main predictor here, when I'm listening to this, what I'm thinking is like, how do we know if we are living into quality relationships? Because I imagine this would vary from person to person and what people find to be nourishing and a loving type of quality relationship. So, what would you say to that? Like, how do we know? I mean, I know what that means for me, but I feel like we live in a busy world. How many people are stopping and really taking a look at their relationships in their lives and being like, okay, like, do we need to do an audit here? Like, how do we determine what a good quality, healthy relationship is if that's not something we're familiar with?
What a great question. I love that question. And that's so much of the focus of my program, The Invitation, is educating women on just answers to questions just like that. How do we know if we're living in quality versus just quantity? Or some of us have relationships, but they don't have depth. And so I think it's really a self-assessment. Do I feel like I belong? Do I have people I can call on in an emergency? Or, Kelly, do I have people I can call on when I just had a win? Like something really
Yes.
big and exciting just happened in my life. Who am I going to pick up the phone and call? Do I feel like I have someone I can share my joy with? Some people don't have that. We always sort of lean towards those like the middle of the night emergencies. Do I have someone to call? But to me, it's like, do I have someone to call who can celebrate with me, who won't be jealous, who won't be envious, who can join me in my success or my joy or my achievement? So I think it's those questions of self-assessment. But really, I think belonging, do I feel alone and lonely often? And do I feel like I have a safety net of support? And that comes in joyful moments and in challenging moments. I think, I mean, if we're going to, there's probably a lot more, but for the sake of boiling it down, those feel like three important areas to assess.
To the person that heard what you just said and is going, wow, I have relationships, I have friendships, but there's no depth. What would your advice be to them?
Depth, right.
If
How do
if
we
that's
create
something they
depth?
want?
Yes. And this question feels like sort of one of the answers to me. So it's a really great question to ask. It has the answer in it. It is intentionality in our gatherings and in the way we sort of hang out with people. More intentionality. That is one of the things that modern life is missing. And I want to externalize, it's missing, I want to sort of externalize the fault or the blame or the responsibility for that missing piece in our modern relationships, that depth is missing or intentionality is missing. I think, yes, we're each responsible for creating that, but we are also up against a culture that doesn't practice that. So that when I say externalize, I want to sort of say, hey, this isn't you that your relationships don't feel super intentional. This is kind of the way our society is created at this point. So you're up against that. So that means I'm taking that sort of personal responsibility for not having intentionality in your relationships and saying, I think it's an external issue, not an internal one. But we can learn and we can decide to create more of that in our sort of our little life, even though the culturally and societally at large, it doesn't really, the dynamics don't really exist in this way with intentionality. So what does that look like in real life? It looks like gathering with your girlfriends and saying, hey, let's get together at someone's house on Thursday night in 2 weeks. And everyone, this idea just came to me the other day. Everyone bring their journal, if you have one, from junior high. We're going to have dinner
Oh,
and we're going to laugh hysterically over the things that we wrote down in our journals when we were in seventh grade. So now we have a reason to gather. There's going to be bonding, intentional bonding, right? You're going to be learning about one another. You're going to be learning about seventh grade versions of one another. But we don't often learn that when you meet someone when you're
yeah.
35 and you're on the playground with your kids or you're at work. You don't know them in the version they were in seventh grade. That's like a missing piece, right? So what is intentional is let's do that. Or let's somebody dig up a journal prompt and let's all again have a casual dinner, but let's pass the journal prompt around and each answer it. Otherwise, what happens with most modern sort of meetups with women is that they end up being catch-ups and they can be quite surface. It's talking about your work, which is not, I mean, it's an important thing, but also it doesn't tell me a whole lot about you. It tells me about your work, but we are so much more than just our jobs. You might talk about a lot about your kids. Again, that's good to know, but you are not your children. So if I'm in friendship with you, I mean, I might know about your children, but I really want to know about you. It's a both and. So we want to go beyond the catch up into the deeper layers, and that generally takes a little bit of thoughtfulness about how we're going to gather. And we don't have to do this every time. Spontaneity is great. We can go sit at a concert. We can go watch a live show. We can go to yoga class and get coffee after. But in the mix, I think there has to be more intentionality. And even in my own group that I started in my life after the pandemic in 2021, I started a friendship group just in my personal life. It had nothing to do with my professional life. And even with us, we're meeting still 4 years later. We still get together every month. And every couple months I'll say, hey, you know what? We need a like a grounding experience with each other. Let's do a night where we bring journal prompts let's do a night where we decide a topic in advance and we all decide to share and talk about it. Goals for the new year, something we're all working on that we would like support with. How can we offer that support to one another? How can we name what we need help with? I mean, that's a really intentional way to gather. So it's in the mix. We have the spontaneous ones where we're just hanging out and it's great fun. And then we also have the ones where we really intentionally meet around a certain topic to get to know one another at a much deeper level.
What I love so much about that too is it's not too intense. It's not too, something as simple as bringing your seventh grade journal or something just to have fun. I feel like it's such a nice way to ease into some depth, which I love that you're not jumping straight into the deep end. So that's really great. Don't you feel, and in your experience with women doing this work, Heather, isn't there just this deep need in all of us to just feel seen and heard? And this is what allows that and facilitates that, because these connections we're making online and digitally, it's not the same.
Oh gosh, they're not the same. And we know that. I think we know that. Intuitively, we know
Right.
that. And of course, we have science to back that up as well. We have both. We have our intuition and we have the science to tell us that yes, technology has a place. And like you and I wouldn't be able to do this. We met and had a spark in Charleston. And how
Right.
lovely that you and I can meet and have a spark. And then because of technology, are able to now have this really rich conversation to share with others. I love that. But I do not love trying to build a relationship through technology because it largely does not work. It lacks so many meta communication, body language, all kinds of things, right? It's asynchronous most of the time. It is not in real life spontaneous. So you're absolutely right about that.
And what's opening up in this conversation for me too is I can't help but think about our children and what a great opportunity we have right now to be models for them as they start building friendships and relationships.
Right. I mean, again, technology, I think in our day and age, completely avoiding it is almost impossible. There's a lot coming out right now there's sort of some pushback on tech right now. And there's a lot of like analog life stuff floating around and people wanting to go back to the old ways and yet try to live, a month of your life without your cell phone to scan QR codes, to get a verification code on something so you can log into your bank account, right? Like it's so intertwined now. And I live a very low tech life and I am a supporter of low tech lives. And so when we look at the lives of our children, it really comes down to modeling, which parents never like to hear. And as a family therapist, it's always like, can you make my kids be on their phones less? And I look at the parents and say, are you on your phone
Yeah, on your
less?
phones
That's
less.
the number one way that your home. Yeah, is for you to be doing less of that. So my recommendation is to let's leverage what tech does offer us. It's really nice to be able to make plans with 5 people at once through a text chain, right? Hey, let's
Right.
meet for yoga next Saturday at 1 o'clock. Here's the link to register. That's really handy. Love that. But when you send to someone a text that says, "How are you?" I mean, when someone texts me that, and I have a little bit of the huff I just had internally. I'm like, really? Why don't you call me? Or if you're thinking about me, just say, I'm thinking about you. That's better than asking me this huge open-ended question over text. So normally when I
Yes.
get that text, I do a little bit of, mental gymnastics, a little self-regulating and say, this is a person who cares about me and they are thinking about me and I'm going to pick up the phone and call them. Clearly it's time for us to have a chat. But
Yeah.
teaching our kids those skills too. Can you be with your friends in real time? Can you guys be with your phones and put them down? If you have a conflict or a hard thing to work through, texting is not the medium to do that through. And teaching your kids those skills. I mean, we all, I'm almost 50, so I was a kid in the 80s, and the home phone in the kitchen was the phone for all 4 kids. And if you wanted to hang out with someone, you had to call and you had to, you know, talk to Mr. Hodson, who is the name of my best friend's dad. And hello, Mr. Hodson, this is Heather. May I speak with Megan, please? Right? You had to learn those skills. And a lot of those things are culturally going away. And so we have to, as parents, unfortunately, we have to work a little harder to override the convenience of technology. And it stinks because I'm a parent too, and we already put so much effort in, and now we have to put even more effort in to teach our kids how to be in real life, in their relationships. And again, the number one way you're going to teach your children that is not talking to them about it. That's important, but that's step number 2. Step number 1 is, are you modeling it?
That's so great. And speaking of real life, and I feel like we could go a whole episode on tech and kids. So I'm going to like pivot us away from that and back to, you mentioned, working through challenges and difficult real life things. And I'd love to get your take on when we encounter conflict with a friend. Maybe it's a new friend, maybe it's a friend you've had for a very long time and you've started having different journeys. This obviously comes up a lot in female friendships, especially like we're living our own lives, and maybe there was the season where it was great and we were super close, and now there's a new season and there's 2 different directions, and that can be really, really challenging to navigate. So I would love to get your take on that.
This is a really juicy topic, Kelly.
Yeah.
Really juicy. And there's so many components. Where to start on answering this question? First, I want to emphasize what you just said, which is sometimes we drift apart. And I want us to say that like 3 times in a row so that your audience can hear us saying this like 3 times in a row, because we don't talk about this much. Yes, friendships shift. We can grow in different ways that we never would have anticipated at the beginning of those friendships, when we felt so aligned, our values felt shared, the way we were maybe raising our children, or if we don't have children, the way we were living our lives felt so in tune or in sync. And then over time that shifts, and it's painful. Like there's grief in this. We are losing something. We're losing something that we once had with someone, and it is natural and normal for this to happen. Not all the time. If this is happening in all your relationships, then there's we got to have a different conversation, right? The common denominator is something else. But it happens in some relationships, and it is normal and natural. And we don't hear that often enough as women. And there are many narratives that are available to women about friendship, and most of them set us up for failure. And one of them is besties for life, ride or die. Those are loaded. Those are forever. Those are forever, right? Those are the remember the heart necklaces that are broken in half, and it's like best friends, and each get. Yes, it's that messaging that boys don't get this, men don't get this. And it creates a false sense of reality in intimacy, because that's what we're really talking about is intimacy here. And just like a marriage, think about the arc of a marriage. I mean, my gosh, we're growing and changing, right? Well, that happens in friendship too. So that's the first thing I want to do, is just have your audience hear us say that is natural and normal, and it does happen, and it doesn't feel good when it happens. It can be natural and normal, and we can not like it. So when it is happening, what most women do is they let the friendship quietly fade, and it is painful for everyone. No one feels healed. Everyone, both friends are scared to talk to the other one. Everyone can feel it. Everybody knows it's happening. And we are petrified to talk about it, because women are socially conditioned to be pleasing and to be conflict avoidant. And this, you want to talk about a whole nother show? There's a topic right there, right? We are socially conditioned to avoid.
I'm putting that down on the calendar right now, Heather. We're going to have that conversation. It's a good one.
We're going to have that one, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that, again, I have a couple of missions with the invitation, aside from helping women find and develop and sustain nurturing friendships and bonded relationships. But one of my missions is to educate women about female friendship, because there is not a lot of that going on. That's why I really appreciate the conversation we're having today. There aren't many like this. A lot of people will talk about the problem that friendship is harder now in adult life than it ever has been. And that's good too. But can we just talk about the dynamics of friendship? Let's just talk about that. That feels so important to me, and there's a lack of that. So what happens is women are socially conditioned to be pleasing, to avoid conflict, and we have this other crappy, if you ask me, social messaging that does us no service, that is that friendships last forever. And you find your best friend and it's magic. And you just feel so nourished and you feel so uplifted by her and it's all good. Well, what intimate relationship is all good all the time? Is your intimate
No.
relationship with your children all good all the time? And intimacy just means emotional bonding, right? Trust and love and all that, not sexual intimacy, obviously. So, is your intimate relationship with your children good all the time, or are there rough patches? How about your siblings? How about your parents? How about your partner, your husband or your wife? Of course not. But we believe that friendship is different. And that is a socially constructed idea that's a bunch of baloney. Because we want two things at once. We want to be deeply known, like you just said, and understood and seen, which means we have to be vulnerable, which means we are in intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to not have to be in conflict with our friends.
Ever.
Ever. Oh, it's so
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable. And guess what? It is uncomfortable. And I am, again, I am trained, I have like advanced training in relationship therapy. I am an attachment therapist. I mean, this is my wheelhouse. It is not easy for me. I mean, it's not comfortable. I do it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not comfortable. I don't like it. Who likes this? Nobody does. So when you're saying what happens when these relationships start to drift, well, the number one
Mm-hmm.
thing is, can you talk about it? Can you go to your friend? And what does that look like? Let's, instead of jumping in the deep end of the pool, let's start at the shallow end because everybody's going to be uncomfortable. How about we go to our friend and say, I am sensing something different in our relationship dynamic. Are you?
Mm.
Start the conversation gently because you're going to be uncomfortable and she's going to be uncomfortable and see where it goes. And sometimes there's going to be this mutual experience of, yeah, it's really changing. Well, what do we want to do about it? I don't know. It just feels really off to me these days. So I think naming it and seeing if you can find a way to come back together despite those differences, that's possible. But one of the number one things that I hear in my clinical practice, and of course in my social life anecdotally as well, but is the pain that comes from female friendships that sort of ghost, right? Like when you get ghosted, all of a sudden you just turn around and this woman that you have spent 10 years of your life with, you know her children, you know her partner, you've traveled together, and then all of a sudden you just are not talking to her anymore. It's like, what the heck? That is so painful. And when we don't understand why someone is leaving us, it adds to our pain.
Mm.
There's still pain when we understand, but it does soften it. And it allows us to process it and heal in a different way. Lack of understanding really leads to longer grief and more pain. So, if anything, can we have a conversation where there can be understanding can be gained and we can share sort of the why with each other? And even if that were happening more often, I would feel like I had achieved something. If I have influenced a few women to take that bold and brave step to approach a girlfriend where things are feeling off and just talk about it.
It's so powerful because the easy thing is to just go, well, whatever, and just kind of walk away. It's so much harder to face that discomfort and sit in it and have those conversations, especially if it doesn't go well. Like if you have someone of a similar mindset on a similar path that's very open, those conversations can be much easier. But if you have someone that's caught off guard, maybe that doesn't feel the same way and is not receptive to this conversation, you have to make some really tough decisions at that point. I have had those in my own life. Granted, those were like years ago, and I do wish I had handled those differently. But even now, I encountered challenging situations where it's just like you reach this point and you're like, I don't know what else to do.
Right. And in almost any other relationship, we would go toward it and try to deal with it. Not all of us. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole complex component here of our attachment styles and whether when we're in distress, we decide to go toward the distress or we shrink from the distress. There's sort of two
Mm-hmm.
different ways that most of us fall into two camps when it comes to
Yeah.
how we handle distress. Some of us are highly avoidant, and some of us pursue the problem and like really want to talk about it and digest it and roll around in it and let's figure this out together and let's fix it, right? And the others of us
Mhm.
are just sort of like, whoa, that's really scary and it doesn't feel safe for
Mhm.
me to do that. And so I avoid it. So there is an attachment component that definitely goes into this conversation, but that gets a little complex and away from our central message, which is it is brave and bold. I'm going to use the same language to go to a friend and say, hey, and Kelly, let's start smaller. What if this is not a long-standing friendship that's sliding sideways?
Mhm.
What if
Mhm.
it's a friendship that's very much intact and you feel good in, but there was a misstep? Your girlfriend did or said something that hurt your feelings or upset you. We don't tackle those either. Most of us sweep those
Right.
under the rug. Again, it isn't, we have been given a message about friendship that is so false, and it has completely set us up for failure in how to handle conflict in intimacy, which is really what we're talking about. And that's me using my language around this because this is how I want women to hear us talking about friendship. These are intimate relationships. And if you go to the bookstore and you look on the bookshelf about romantic love, marriage, dating, any of that, what are several chapters going to be focused on? How to handle conflict.
Right.
And women do not receive that message because it's platonic love, it is not romantic love. And so we do not get any messaging about how to handle conflict. And it is such a disservice to us. So I'm going to give you an example. Can I give you a real life example? This just happened to me last
Please.
weekend.
Hmm. Yep. Go for
Okay.
it.
So a dear friend of mine who's in my friendship circle, my personal, friendship circle. So we spend a lot of time together. Our relationship is very intentional. We had plans for a dinner at her house. She invited us, our family, with her family and another family. And I had been sick for a while. I got the flu. And so I'd been really
Oh.
sick, actually. And I got a text from her and it said, I know you've been really sick. I imagine that you're not going to want to come with your family to dinner. It was actually for Easter. For
Hmm.
Easter. So let's reschedule. And I got that text and I was like, it did not hit. It landed all
Hmm.
wrong.
Hmm.
Instantly, I was like, why is she canceling Easter dinner with our family? What the heck is going on? So I could have responded with some sort of passive comment, snarky comment, sarcastic. I mean, what are the choices? Sarcastic, pleasing, anything that would be avoidant and
Hmm.
not picking up the phone, which is what I did do, which was not easy, and saying, hey, I got your text. And that didn't land well. That didn't feel good. When I read that text, what I read is that you're canceling our dinner, and I don't understand why. And not only are you canceling it, but you're canceling it and putting it sort of on my plate like I wanted it to be canceled. And that's not my truth. I very much want to see
Hmm.
you, and I very much want to keep our plans, and I had no intention of canceling them just because I had been sick and it's been sort of a rough few weeks, but I'm fine now, and it sounds like you want to cancel. Can you give me a clear message? And she was caught off guard and kind of hemmed and hawed for a second. And then she said, you know what? I'm really sorry. I did do that. I had this on my mind and I realized I put that on your plate. And you know what? Of course, we're going to have Easter and let's make our plan. And there you go. Two women who are choosing each other, who are choosing connection, who are choosing to go through the hard things and not abandon the friendship because there was a hard moment. We are totally fine. I'm not holding a grudge. I don't believe she is. And that's real life. That's if my husband had done sent me a text that totally missed me by a mile, I'd pick up the phone and say, "What is going on? Why
Right.
don't we do this with our female friendships? Because we are taught that it's not okay." And so what happened for both of us is I guarantee you that strengthened our relationship. Being able to be honest with one another and work through conflict generally strengthens any relationship.
Oh, Heather, I'm so glad you shared that story because learning opportunities for you both there. But if we could all have friendships like that where we just speak to each other, I mean, imagine what that would feel like. I can't imagine what that would feel like. Like, just like, it's not mean to say, hey, that landed wrong with me. Can we work through that? Because how many times, people listening, have you had a situation like this and you brushed it under the rug? I say this because I've done it myself. And then you start building resentment and there's a frustration, and then you start getting irritated about other things with this person. It becomes so much bigger than if you just said the thing or had the conversation. And that's why I love that you're doing this work and giving women permission to look at friendship in a new way, experience friendship in a new way.
But Kelly, what you just named, it felt like you were talking about my entire professional life. There's a problem that doesn't get resolved, and then it builds resentment, and then little tiny things become big things, and then
Right.
that erodes the quality of the relationship. Well, doesn't that sound like we're talking about marriage? Doesn't that sound like
Yes.
we're talking about family relationships in adulthood? Yeah, because it's all the same. This is
Mm,
all we bonding and intimacy is all the same. The premises of it, in other words, is what I'm saying. The foundations of it are all the same. When we do not have the tools to manage, this is okay, listeners, listen up. Here it is. When we do not have the tools to manage conflict while staying connected to one another, relationships are at risk. So, what I did with my girlfriend was we had conflict, but we didn't lose connection. Part of the reason she and I didn't lose connection is I said, when she was able to respond in a way that felt attuned to me,
mhm.
I said, it feels so good to me that you and I said, I know this is uncomfortable and hard. And I am sitting here, and I had tears in my eyes. I said, I am so grateful that the two of us can have these kinds of conversations because this is the kind of friendship I want with you. I want a real, true, grounded friendship. And if I hurt you, I want you to pick up the phone and call me. We are going to work through this and we're going to be fine. And can I tell you how lovely our Easter was? Totally lovely. Because we did real work together. We
Right.
really we really did this together, and it didn't take long. We weren't on the phone forever. This was not a huge one. This was not like some gigantic miss,
Hmm.
but but it was Easter, and which is very important to me. And I don't have any family in
Hmm.
Colorado, and my parents are both gone. My siblings live very far away, so having community on Easter is actually very important to me. So that hit particularly hard for me. But I love that she and I were able to work through it, but we named everything. This is hard. This
Right.
is uncomfortable. I'm grateful to you that you danced with me. You got on the dance floor and we did this and this was not easy and our
Hmm.
relationship's going to be better and stronger for it. So we named all the parts.
And it's so huge that you did that because so often we may say or do, she may have had no idea that that was going to land the way it did with you. But you expressing that to her allows you both to like deepen that relationship. You learn, and it's a moment of self-reflection. There's so much learning in that moment. And it doesn't just stop with you two. Like that kind of stuff expands into your lives and into your other relationships. And that's how you make real meaningful change. Obviously, this conversation, but
Right.
in your everyday life as well.
Absolutely.
Heather, I can't help but think about this. It keeps coming to my mind, so I just wanted to talk about it. This thing you've been discussing as far as like how at a very young age we are just given, especially women, given such a false narrative and understanding of friendship and this whole best friend thing. And two things are coming to my mind when you were talking about this. First is I have two boys, so I know this is a show for women. We
Mhm.
talk a lot about women, but even in young boys, I've multiple times both of them have come home sad, and I'm like, what's wrong? They're like, well, I don't have a best friend. I don't have a best friend. Because on the playground and at school, even in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, everyone finds their best friend. And when kids are that young, you have a new best friend like every week. But there is that conditioning and that teaching and that understanding starts at such a young age. And to expand on that, in the women's group that I run, there are women in there who feel deeply sad because they say they don't have a best friend. And so this perpetuates
Hmm.
so far into life and continues to bring sadness. And that's why I love this conversation. And I love that you're speaking directly to that and I had this conversation with my boys where we talked about, well, this is like such a simplified, non psychologist way of saying this, but I'm like, there's no such thing as a best friend. Okay, there's just no such thing. That does not exist. It's not really how that works. There's really good friendships, and those are going to change, and so we go on that path. Um, but what would you say to the woman who is in her 40s, still feeling sad that she doesn't have a best friend?
This is such a fascinating topic. It's so interesting to be in this field and in this profession and eyeball deep in friendship literature and research and all that. And this is a question I have not asked in my own life. So, like sometimes when you don't identify with
Yeah.
it, you just don't think about it, right?
Right.
And this is coming up a lot in my private practice right now. A lot of, 'cause of course, I do a lot of this work in my clinical work too, working with people to help them build their friendships. And a lot of and there's a university right across the campus, right across the street from me. So
Hmm.
I see a lot of college kids, and of course they're coming to me with this best friend language. But so are adult women, like you're saying.
Yes. Yes.
And I think again, there's such a disservice in this messaging because what I would say, what does a best friend mean to you? What would be happening in your life if you had a best friend? So that's a very therapy question to ask. They're going to answer that question and it's going to be something magical.
Hmm.
They're going to be understood. There's going to be always someone by their side. They're going to be supported. They're going to have someone to call when they want to go get coffee. All of these things, right? And then I might
Right.
look at them and say, do you need one person for that? Just one? Or could you possibly have several? And those several women meet so many different kinds of needs because you have different parts and they have different parts. And you can enjoy and celebrate certain aspects of each of those friendships. Or does it have to be one person? I said, that's a lot to ask of one person. That's a lot to ask of you to be their person.
Right.
Right. I think I would sort of shift the conversation
Mm.
away from this over identification that the best friend solves all the problems because it simply does not. It puts all your eggs in one basket. It often means enmeshment, which is a very clinically term for over dependence on one person. And also
Mm.
that we build our identity based on them accepting us and including us and loving us and liking us. So we think if you love and like me, then I'm okay. And of course, what we're always fighting for in the therapy room is can you be okay without anyone? Can you be okay on your own 2 feet? Of course, we don't want that long term for you. But we know that those of us who can stand in our own sense of truth, authenticity, belief in ourselves, understanding of our own values, when that is more robust, so our state of authenticity is more cohesive, it's more whole, we are much
Mhm.
more likely to attract others who are like that as well and not be striving for a best friend who will complete us. There's a little bit of the like Jerry Maguire thing in here. You
Mm.
complete me.
Hmm.
And I think
Right.
it's like you said, it's an old narrative. It doesn't last. It's a very young narrative. This is what
Mhm.
we crave, like you said, your boys, right? This
Right.
is a an adolescent in our development, in our wisdom. When we're young, we just want that one person to complete us. Well, we're young. We've got to
Yeah.
grow through that and evolve. But when adult women are saying it, their young part is still in the lead of their life and really
Mm.
wanting that completion through one other person. And it just probably won't work.
Oh, that is so good, Heather. That is so good. And it's such a perfect segue to talk about what you're creating and the possibility you're creating for the future of women's friendships and what you have built with the invitation. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because it truly is something so beautiful and it really builds on this conversation that we're having today.
Right. Yeah, especially jumping off the best friend conversation. I built the invitation. Yeah. I built the invitation to help women not only create friendship circles, so a group of women that they are a part of,
Mhm.
but to help them learn how to strengthen and deepen friendships. So it's a year-long program where, let's say, Kelly Smith, my friend Kelly Smith, she's like, I'm going to join the invitation. She goes out and finds up to 7 other women, Maybe Kelly decides she's going to say, "Hey, Susie Q, best friend." She has a close friend that she might decide to say, "Hey, let's create this group together. Why don't you invite a few women and I'll invite a few women. Let's share the load and create this group of up to 8 women. We're all going to say yes to one another for a year. Everyone becomes a member of the invitation. And then once a month, at the beginning of the month, I send out a discussion topic, all the support content, how to guide a conversation, and it gives women a reason to gather each month, is to have this really rich, meaningful, sometimes playful, sometimes more serious. It's a whole range of discussion topics to gather around 12 times. And that is just the base of the program. That's like the foundation of it, are these 12 gatherings once a month. Throughout the program, I also offer all kinds of support content on how to learn to be a better friend. There are so many ways that we can assess and self-evaluate and reflect and contemplate on what it means to be a friend. What does it mean? What kind of friend are we? And who are we looking for in our friendships? So there's a huge educational component to it, but mostly the program offers a structure to not only invite and create the group, so that we need help with that because that's sort of a foreign concept. So I
Yeah.
provide a lot of support content on how to do that. And then once your group is established, there are some really three key things that are woven into the program that make it successful and make it therapeutically sound, which it's not a therapy program. That is not the intention. But it is based on all my clinical knowledge. It is based on my attachment background and what I know that helps people. Again, what's my job? To help people improve the quality of their relationships. So this is a program to help people improve the quality of their friendships. So all that's infused into the program, but you don't really feel it. You just know that it's working. And so it's about regularity, intentionality, and commitment. Those are the three things that deep, meaningful, sustained friendship, those are going to be the three components that are present when you really evaluate your long-standing and meaningful friendships. It can even be a, excuse me, a shorter friendship. Maybe you've only had a friend for a year or two, but if those three components are there, it's going to be a very nourishing and satisfying friendship. And so I've built those in. The regularity comes from meeting at least once a month. And that's tackling a huge problem that exists in our modern culture, which is that we can have a friend who's a good friend, a close friend, a meaningful friendship, and we may only see them once every, 3 months. And that doesn't help us continue to build the depth of intimacy and the bonds that we really crave to have a sense of belonging and to feel not alone. So regularity is one of the things that's infused into the foundation of the program. Intentionality, which we've already talked about. And intentionality is we need to know why we're gathering. That's why when we have these sort of just catch up, hey, let's meet for coffee, hey, let's go out for girls' night, those are fun when they're in balance with more intentional ways of getting together. And so the intentionality is infused into the program because everybody knows we're getting together to have this really meaningful women's discussion tonight. Lastly is commitment. We know so much in psychology that our mindsets matter. Mindsets are predictive. So what I think about something, what I believe to be true about something will become the reality because my behaviors are going to follow that belief. So I harnessed the power of mindset in this program, and you're looking at these women you're inviting and saying, "Hey, would you like to join me for a year of female connection and friendship?" It's a year. And my expectation is that you're going to show up for the most part, every month, right? We can't all make it every month, but 10 times, that's about the average. That's sort of my expectation, is that most women will be able to show up at least 10 times over the course of a year. So when we make a commitment like that, it shifts how we show up, how we prioritize these other women and ourselves. So commitment had to be a component of the program, and it had to be over a long period of time. Many people have said, why don't you do 3 months or why don't you do 6 months? And there's a very simple answer. It will not work. We need longer. And there's tons of data on this. Jeffrey Hall has been a huge contributor to this data. In 2018, he published research that it's really circulating in the world of social sciences about platonic love and friendship. He's an associate professor at the University of Kansas, and he's the one who came out with the study that has been so powerful about how many hours it takes to build friendship. And I think I mentioned this in the gathering you attended, which is 50 hours to take an acquaintance relationship into casual friendship. Casual friend to friend is 90 hours, and friend to close friend is 200 hours in 6 months.
Wow.
So,
and is that
knowing
in-person
data,
hours, Heather?
mostly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to that study. And when you actually read the study, there are a lot of things. One, I love that question. One is this is not work related. So this is, if you are spending 200 hours because you're on a team project with someone, that can feel like a friendship, but it's a bit of a placebo because you're really not talking about your personal lives and your stories and your seventh grade journals and all that kind of stuff. If you can translate that friendship outside of the workplace, it may be a blossoming friendship. That could absolutely happen, but 200 hours with a colleague does not necessarily lend itself to friendship. You really have to transfer that friendship outside of the workplace for friendship. And also, this is not, spending 50 hours of texting. No. The bulk of this is spent in real life. But in the research, they did indicate that a certain percentage of this is going to be phone calls, and there is some digital way of interfacing because that's just how we do it now, but the bulk of it is in person. So that last foundational pillar of the program is commitment. And the reason I'm gifting this to women, it's all infused into the program because I want to gift it to everyone. You don't have to do these things. You don't have to figure out commitment. You don't have to figure out the reason to gather. You don't have to figure out the regularity because those are all infused into the program. Is because we have so much data to understand what makes friendship work and how bonds are built. So that part to me was just intuitive with the kind of work that I do and also just my own personal inclination towards relational. I'm a very relational person. I crave deep connection with people just naturally. So the program came together pretty quickly once the idea hit me.
And it's such a beautiful program and opportunity for women. And I'd love to get we talked about this a bit, but can you just remind us of the importance of that in-person interaction? Because we are also digital. We're all spending so much time online. We have AI in the mix now. And people forget the importance of getting out and connecting with people. And so can you just remind us of why this is so important as we move deeper into AI, as we try to deepen and build better relationships, like the important piece of that human to human interaction?
Oh, it is so important. And the fact that we even have to name this, I got to tell you, Kelly, I'm having a reaction. I'm like, do we really have to name this? But I know we do.
We do.
The tug of technology and the busyness of modern life, they just pull us away from these face-to-face interactions. Robin Dunbar is a researcher and psychologist who has been highly influential in the world of studying platonic relationship. And he's world renowned. He's been studying all of this since the 70s. And in a book that he published in 2019, there was a section that really struck me. I mean, I know this intuitively, but it was so powerful to read it from one of the world's top researchers on friendship, which was, have you been in your friends' homes? And I mean, the second I read that, I was like, yes, this is it. And this is what I intuitively know. I'll meet someone and find a spark and, we'll do the coffee shop. And of course I live in Boulder, Colorado. And so here you don't go on a walk with someone, you go on a hike with them because I live in the foothills of the Rockies. Sort of the joke to Colorado, you're like, everyone hikes. It's like, yes, because that is what we have access to. So you go on the hikes and you go to meet at a coffee shop, and it's not going to be long before I invite you to my home. I want you to know my space. I want to bring you in and show you you're important to me. I'm bringing you into my home. I want you to meet my husband and my children and my dog. I want you to see my things and see how I live. And I want to be invited into your home. And when I read that sentence out of the book, Robin Dunbar's work, and it's all this, like, the book is pretty heavily based in the research and a lot of statistics and that kind of stuff, a lot of numbers. And then here was just this sentence, and I thought, this is it. We need to be in each other's presence because that's intimacy. The reason the face-to-face interactions are so important is that's how we bond. Kelly, there's a really interesting piece about this. I'm going to kind of divert for 1 second, but just to emphasize why we need the face-to-face. So I'm, as we all know, a psychotherapist, and so I prefer to do my therapy in person in my office. But of course, I do offer virtual therapy sessions. It's just a fact of modern life. We can't always get to a therapy session in someone's office. The studies on that are proving that the efficacy is just about as high as in person. So it does work. However, this is such an interesting piece. I do a lot of couples work and relational work where I have more than one person in the therapy room. They cannot be on separate computers and have the therapy be effective. Why is that? Because when you look into a computer screen, you are not looking into the eyes of the person you're talking to. And it does not feel the same. We have some level of that, but not the emotional intensity. And the emotional intensity can be good or bad, but that's all therapeutic. Whatever whether it's good energy or positive emotions or negative or difficult or uncomfortable, whatever, we don't feel them at the same level, and we cannot look into one another's eyes. And we know that we release oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. We know that friendship also, our hormones are very active in friendship, right? We also have dopamine, which is the reward center releasing, hey, do this more. This thing that you're doing, this face-to-face connection where you're looking in someone's eyes, please do this more. I'm going to give you a dopamine hit to reward you for doing it so you'll remember and you'll do it again. So those are things that we cannot get, and certainly not at the same potency when we are interfacing through a digital platform, because it interrupts the potency of those interactions.
That's such good information, Heather. Thank you for that. I could spend probably 4 hours talking to you, but I know you do have a life and maybe some hikes to go on. So I will wrap this up shortly, but I would love for you to let any listeners who feel inspired by what you've said today, maybe curious about the invitation, how can they continue their relationship and their learning from you?
Well, if you're interested in the invitation, that information is available on my website. It's heatherjcarlson.com, and there you'll find all the information you can imagine about the program, the invitation. And I am also very interested and available for emails from people asking questions or support along the way. The program is still, small enough that luckily I'm able to really offer myself as a sort of cheerleader, and certainly to brainstorm, especially if people are feeling stuck on how to start engaging with the program or how to invite women. I field a lot of phone calls and emails like that, and I'm happy to do so. And if the invitation isn't right for you, I think what I would leave you with is to really think about maybe like 2 or 3 key relationships in your life that you would like to focus on and deepen. And what would that look like? Partly it would look like calling those people and saying, you know what? You mean so much to me, and I'd really like to figure out a way for us to see each other more often and see each other in really meaningful ways. And name it. And again, that commitment piece, that mindset piece I was talking about a few minutes ago, put this on the top of your mind and your friend's mind, and have it be a joint effort to deepen those relationships. And then start thinking about ways that you can gather that are either really playful and fun. We know that when we have experiences that are shared, it expands those experiences and makes them more whatever they are, fun, exciting, and playful, awe-inspiring, whatever that is, it expands them. So instead of just the normal wine night, why not go to whatever your jam is, an art exhibit, a punk rock band, I don't know, whatever your thing is, do more of that. Invite them over for coffee and get like a conversation deck. I mean, there are so many people now who have conversation decks you can buy. And you just pick one and like you said, let it be lighthearted, let it be fun. I just did one with some girlfriends, and the first question we pulled was, "What's the weirdest thing in your purse right now?" I mean, we laughed and we got to know each other just from that answer. So super fun. Again, these don't have to be forced. It doesn't have to feel like formalized. In fact, I think if it does, it can be a little awkward. But it's okay to have a taste of awkwardness when you're starting moving in your relationships with more intentionality. But that's my encouragement for women. If the invitation isn't the right thing right now, is to focus on a few key friendships and about how you can include regularity, intentionality, and commitment into those key relationships.
This has just been so amazing. And for anyone listening, I hope you feel inspired and excited to go deeper and create just some richer relationships in your life. Heather, thank you so much for your time today. You will be hearing from me again so we can do another session on another topic.
I love that. I'm here for it.